from uptown, you know my sound is major. I know you like the lyrics, kid, so just do me a favor. Tell the tech to turn my dad up. This is a pack cut, hey, yo, don't back up. Because I wanna dive in and swim in the mentals, where your thoughts roam. I wanna make it on my home, therefore you'll never be alone. But when you hear my song, sing along with the rhythm. Cause I got faith in fat beats that I give them. Yes, it's the is, and I'm checking out the blonde one. Maybe I can have one, maybe I can con one. Chill, I'm one with God, brothers, it's hard to stay straight until you're scared straight, and then you can't wait to get out.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. Wow. Ramon, I'll tell you what. Well, first of all, we're recording this on July 14th of 2014. And, I know I've been, you guys are probably going to get a little tired of me mentioning this, but the weather here in Western Washington is abnormal. I mean, and I'm assuming, from what I'm witnessing, it's pretty abnormal all over the planet right now.
It's definitely abnormal here.
Yeah, it's again today we had that marine layer that came in, the marine layer, which is normally within the first 15, 20 miles of the coast. Well, I'm 70 miles inland and 70, 80 miles inland, and we have marine layer in here all day until after noon sometime, about 1 o'clock before it really started burning off. And it was in the upper 50s, which is kind of chilly for middle of July in Western Washington. And here I am this afternoon. It's 80 degrees outside, and I've got my air conditioner on. So, and it just blows me away that the way the weather patterns have been working here. And we had that show, the live show we did on Truth Frequency with Dane Wigington, and that
was very educational.
Oh man, I would urge you guys. We've got 4 hours of material with Dane now. We've got 2 hours that we did a month ago here on the pre-recorded show on the website, and then we did 2 hours with him last weekend with the Truth Frequency Radio Network, our live show over there. And I would really urge you guys to take a listen to that material. It's sobering. It's very sobering, and he has a pretty a hardline approach and views of what the outcome is. I don't think he really delves too deeply into the consciousness aspects of what's going on here, but in the area that he's working, he's sticking to the hard facts, and that's what he really needs to do to be able to reach the masses with this material and get them to be able to swallow it. If you start throwing in some of the woo-woo stuff, the consciousness stuff, the other influences that are at play here, it has a tendency to throw people's walls up, and they turn away from it. So he's going about it through that route, and it is very sobering, but it is a very important issue that people need to be paying attention to. And I'll throw his website out there again. It's geoengineeringwatch.org, and some good stuff there. Anyways, besides that, how's things over there in Japan, Ramon?
Rainy. I haven't really seen the sky much because it's been like heavy clouds. Not even like the hazy stuff, just heavy clouds. It's been cloudy.
Have they looked like normal clouds, or you get the weird patterns there too?
At nighttime it clears up a little bit, and then you get some of the weird clouds and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot to explain. But other than that, in the news section, I found one that definitely fits with our show, which you guys are going to love. But before we get into the show, aliens have long lived among us. And this one is very interesting here. Let me read this. Scientists of the University of California came up with an unusual hypothesis. Suggests that space aliens have long settled on Earth and lived among us as observers. Of course, there is no evidence of this. Okay, whatever. But
Yeah.
according to ancient sources, including the Bible, our planet has been visited by representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations since its inception. And I'll read up to there, which is quite interesting to have a university mention this.
What
You know,
university was that again?
University of California,
Oh, wow. Was
which
it
is,
UC Berkeley, or does it?
it just says University of
Okay.
California. It's on the Facebook, so you guys can check that out. And here's another one that makes me really happy if these people are legit. It's, these two Russian scientists, and they look kind of young. They're doing like a funding campaign to raise, how much is it? $800,000 to build, guess what? The Tesla transmitter. It says, let's build a planetary energy transmitter. So they're doing the same thing that Tesla was doing up in Long Island, not too far from where I'm from. So guys, check that out. If these guys are going to try to find them to interview these two guys, if they're really doing that, that's a game changer. That's probably what you've been sensing.
Yeah.
Right now they're at $38,000, close to 39, but they still need, another 700,000 and what's that, 60 something.
Yeah,
62.
that would be quite something if they understand how it's put together and understand the principles behind it. I'm really excited to see it. I wonder if it would reach all the way over here.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying they're saying a planetary one, so
Yeah.
I guess is it along the same line as what Tesla was trying to do.
Yeah.
And one last thing I want to talk about. This is more a little bit of complaint. I try not to do that too much on the show, but I saw a video. I didn't put this on the 100th Monkey, but I saw a video of this company that supposedly built a hoverboard. If anybody's ever watched Back to the Future Part 2, any of us who watched that wanted one. And this company had like Tony Hawk's and DJ Moby and what was I forgot his real name. The doc from Back to the Future. What was his name, John?
I don't remember his name.
Anyway, the guy, the scientist, he was in this video, and they're showing, the guys floating on the hoverboard, and there was a company website, and it turned out to be a big joke hoax.
Right.
And Tom, I was so disappointed.
Oh, did you just come across that, Ramon?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I saw that like last year.
You didn't mention it to me.
Oh, well, why should I mention a fake website?
So I wouldn't fall for it? That's why I'm mentioning it now, because I'm sure I wouldn't be the only person who gets really excited.
Oh, if that technology comes out, Ramon, it's going to be in something besides a hoverboard, a skateboard.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
You'll see it somewhere else before you saw it in a toy.
Yeah. Well, I know Google was trying to work on it. Google's trying to work on everything. But anyway, we have an amazing guest for you, and this is definitely a different kind of story, and it's more of the stuff that I really, really like. And for those of you who've listened to the show more than a year, you know what I really like. Because I mention it every week.
We've got Helen Littrell with us tonight. Helen is Marisa's mother. She operates a medical transcription business and serves as a freelance editor and consultant for a major medical publisher. She's also authored 6 medical terminology books. She currently lives in a rural area of southern Oregon. As a child, she was captivated by strange lights in the night sky. It wasn't until she began her hypnotic regressions following the death of her daughter Marisa that she began to understand the depth of her own involvement and the role she had with Raechel's long Raechel long before her daughter and Raechel became roommates. Littrell explains that her ongoing paranormal experiences and extraterrestrial encounters leave no doubt in her mind that meaningful synchronicities exist to show us the way to a much broader life experience than most people can ever imagine. The paranormal has played an enormous and very important part in her life ever since she first saw the lights in the sky as a child, and it continues to this day. What these experiences really are, she can't say. I don't know what their purpose is, except perhaps to prove that to those of us who are willing to believe that there is more to this existence than can be explained away as weather balloons, airport beacons, and the seemingly ever-present planet Venus. She does believe, however, that they underscore the fact that we are not alone in the universe. Her website is www.fifthworld.com. That's the number 5, THWORLD.com. Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Helen Littrell.
Well, thank you so much, Tom and Ramon, for having me, too. It's really a privilege to be on with people like you that are thinking the way that you do and trying to get the word out to more people.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So, Helen, we'd like to start the show off with a little bit of background on our guests. And, normally, at least what Ramon and I have witnessed through, there's a good chunk of people that end up getting the proverbial 2x4 upside the head to actually open their eyes and start really in earnest looking into this stuff. And I noted that you mentioned that you've been kind of curious about this stuff since you were a child. But was there something that along your path that turned your head more intently towards the, for lack of a better term, the woo-woo world?
Well, yes, and actually it did begin when I was a child. I don't remember, maybe 6 or 7, something like that, but I kept seeing lights in the sky at night. And I lived in a small farming area in upstate New York, and when I would talk about these lights in the sky to my parents, they really were upset. They did not want to hear about it, and they did not want me to talk about it. But I kept seeing them. I just did, and I just couldn't understand why they weren't interested in it. And finally it got to the point where I talked about it too much, I guess, and it must have been obvious that I believed in it too much, because they finally threatened me if I didn't stop that they would have me locked up in an insane asylum, which was not too far from where we live, maybe 40 or 50 miles.
Who was the person threatening you? Your family?
My parents made this threat to me. And at that time, in the early 40s, all you needed to have that done to a person, to have them locked away, was to have your family doctor sign a document, and that person would never be heard from again. So I decided to just keep quiet about it, but I didn't stop seeing those lights. And I made up my mind that when I had my chance, which would be when I got away from home, when I was older, I would talk about them, and I would check them out, and I was just not going to let go of it.
Right. So, give us a little bit of background on your daughter, your obvious marriage and daughter, and her life, and how did this all start for you? I'm referring towards Rachel's Eyes, the book that you put out there, which I didn't mention in the intro, and I should have. Bad Tom.
Oh, yeah. If I could just mention something, too, while I'm thinking of it here, if anyone wanted a signed copy of that book, they could contact me, to go to my email at booklady, hl@aol.com.
Well, there we go. And we can stick a link to that actually on the webpage too here.
Oh, that would be great if you could do that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people like to contact me, sometimes people who have also had unusual experiences and similar to mine. So, but at any rate, you'd like to know how my daughter and I got involved here with Raechel's eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter had enrolled in a junior college. This was in, I believe it was early 1972, the spring of 1972. And at that time, she was almost totally blind. She lost the sight in one eye when she was still in high school, and then about 6 months later, she lost the sight in the other one. So she went to a special high school that had facilities for teaching children that had lost their sight. But then she did enroll in a junior college in Northern California, and she didn't have much money, so that was going to be an issue. She really needed to have a roommate and one that would be able to help her pick out her clothes and do regular activities of daily living. And at first, there was no one available. But the counselor told her she would watch out and she would try to come up with somebody within just a few days. So it just so happened that within 2 or 3 days, this Colonel Nadine came into the office with his so-called daughter, and the daughter needed a roommate too. And they said that her needs were to find someone who wouldn't be too particular or curious about her appearance or the fact that she spoke a little differently. Different inflections and that, and that money would not be a problem. He would be able to pay more than his share or her share of the rent and I guess all of the utilities. And so it seemed that was kind of a deal made in heaven there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they called, they got the girls together, and they seemed to be amenable to the deal, and so that was how they got together. And it really was unusual when I look back on it now, because my daughter did need someone who could help her, because she just couldn't see much of anything. Her eyesight did fluctuate a little, but it was never good. But here was Raechel, who essentially needed somebody that couldn't see very well.
Right.
Because her appearance was different, and so that was how they got together.
Oh, how was she? What was she losing her eyesight from? Diabetes?
Diabetes, yes.
Yeah.
And it was childhood diabetes. She was diagnosed when she was 8 years old, and in those days they just didn't have much in the way of medications, and
right.
They had to do the injections. They didn't have the pills. And so we knew that was going to happen, probably, but like things like that, you're just thankful for every day that it has not happened. But the girls got along really well, except that it seemed that Raechel didn't have a real flair for choosing good color combinations, because some of Marisa's friends would tell her at school, what have you got on? You know, those colors don't go together. And then she'd say, well, I can't see, and Raechel picked them out.
Huh.
So there was a little funny side to it, too.
Right. So what was the first thing that made you think there was something not quite usual, was not quite normal about this relationship?
Well, do you mean my first encounter, so that I knew for sure that Raechel
right.
was... Well, I'd stopped to see my daughter one evening after work, because I worked at an Air Force installation right near the college. And so I stopped to see her after work, and she'd been telling me these things about the odd-looking outfits that Raechel was picking out for her, and also about the fact that she could not eat regular food. She just had to have a certain kind of food that came in little boxes and was always delivered outside the door when she was just about to run out. And she couldn't drink regular water either. She had to have a clear-looking liquid that looked like water, but it wasn't. And Raechel had warned her, don't ever eat any of that and don't ever drink that water because it's not good for you. So anyway, I'd been hearing these things about Raechel, and I really wanted to see her. So I stopped after work, and I talked to my daughter. Raechel hadn't gotten home from class yet. And I was just getting ready to go, and I'm standing in the doorway. The doorway was open, and I said, God, I wish I could have seen her. And my daughter said, well, I think that might be her coming now. It sounds like her, because they lived on a second-story apartment, and there were big, wide cement steps that came up. So I stood there a minute longer, and it was Raechel. And so she just kind of rushed by me, between us, into the apartment, and I think she had left some papers or something she needed. So when she came back out, she got almost to me, maybe 3 or 4 feet away, and suddenly she sort of tripped on something. I don't know if it was the rug or just stumbled, whatever it was. I could see that she was just going to fall over straight forward. She didn't make any effort to catch herself. And so I reached out and grabbed her arm to catch her and stood her back up. But as I grabbed her arm, her sleeve slid up. And I found myself holding on to her forearm, and that skin just didn't feel human. It didn't. It felt cool, which it shouldn't have because it was a really, really hot afternoon. And it felt kind of spongy, kind of like, well, you know how mushrooms feel. They're not real spongy, but they're not firm. And as I had stood her up, she and I are face to face, almost nose to nose, and her glasses, the dark glasses that she always wore, had slipped down, and I found myself looking right straight into her eyes, and her eyes sort of wrapped around the side of her face, and they were a solid avocado green, the inside of an avocado, that light green, and they had vertical black slits for pupils.
Wow.
And
What complexion was she?
Actually, she had sort of an orangish, greenish complexion. It wasn't bright, bright colors or anything, but it was not the complexion that we would have.
So the closest thing would it be to like somebody who is a natural redhead, but their complexion is a little orangey?
Well, yeah, probably more like that than anything else, but it had a pale greenish cast to it too, but it did have an orange tint to it. I hadn't thought about that, about the reddish.
Yeah.
But I guess I should have, because when I saw her at another time, without her usual costume that I called it, it was a long jumpsuit, long arms and legs on it, and her scarf that she tied around her head, and wraparound glasses. But when I saw her without the scarf on one day, she did have sort of an orangish red hair, but it was a very light shade, and it was real kind of thin and skimpy, and it had a little bit of body to it too. It wasn't curly, but it wasn't flat to her head.
Yeah. So what about her? What about her general physical build? Was she basically the physical build? Was it pretty normal or?
Not really. She was kind of slight built, probably about 5'4" or 5 inches tall, and kind of long arms and legs. But she kept herself covered up all the time with the long-legged, long-sleeved jumpsuits, which were the style back then.
Right.
If you remember. And she always wore a scarf tied around her head and the wraparound sunglasses, the dark ones. And that was unusual enough, but back in the 70s there was a lot of the kids dressed kind of unusual. I had a couple jumpsuits myself, as I remember it, but I didn't wear them all the time.
Right.
Not in the middle of summer like that, or spring. But she just didn't act. She seemed uncoordinated sometimes.
Right.
Well, certainly that time when she fell, that was uncoordinated. And most people, when you trip on something, you try to catch yourself. But she didn't do anything. She just fell right straight over and would have fallen on the floor if I hadn't caught her.
Interesting. So, I'm curious. Did you ever have any conversations with Marisa alone with yourselves and Marisa, where you guys may have talked about the types of things that her and Raechel had talked about? I mean, I know. Thinking back to myself and friends that I had when I was, in my early 20s and stuff, we'd go off into some pretty interesting conversations. Which kind of I don't know, are a little bit of a telltale sign of where we are with our own minds. Looking
That's
back
true.
at those conversations, did you guys ever talk about conversations that they'd had?
Yes, we did, somewhat. It was really difficult for Marisa to strike up a conversation with Raechel. It wasn't that Raechel didn't want to, but she didn't have much of a fund of knowledge. Like kids that age, they talk about music and boys and things like that, and clothes and dating and all kinds of things like that. But Raechel had never been on a date. She didn't seem to know much about music. Well, she had been raised after she arrived on Earth. She had been raised on that secret base called Four Corners. And it wasn't like a regular military base as we know it now. It was top secret, and a lot of it was underground at the time. And mostly her companions were the nurses who took primary care of her. And so it was all older people, humans that she had been around, and she had never been around a human young person. So Marisa did try. She never gave up on anything very easily. It was just, she kind of got stonewalled there. It was, poor Raechel just didn't have anything much to contribute, although she wanted to be friendly and she wanted to learn. But it was just the way it was then.
It sounds like she didn't have much of an experience base to draw upon for conversation.
She really didn't. And of course, what she had, the experiences she had had, where she was raised at Four Corners, they weren't all that interesting, I guess, probably to Marisa, although she would have listened and talked about it. But I don't think Raechel brought that up very much. It was a difficult relationship, and yet they were really good friends.
How would you describe that relationship? Because I think that's one of the such an important relationship because it's, at least from my knowledge, it's one of the beginning relationships between two different species. Or
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. She was half, right? She was half human.
Excuse me?
Raechel was half human.
Yes, they're probably about from half to 2/3. I'm not really clear on that, but she was. So she had that part of her that was human, but she didn't have the experience as a human to go along with it. Because she was raised, she was taken as an embryo and raised to a certain stage on a ship, off-planet ship. And then, this is what she told me, and then she was raised till she was older on Zeta Reticulum.
Well,
I know this sounds kind of far out.
so at what point?
Not for this show.
Yeah. At what point in your relationship did she kind of come out of the closet with all this information?
Well, actually, it wasn't her so much about her origin and about her Colonel Nadine's background. She wasn't the one who gave that out so much. It was Colonel Nadine. After this episode where Raechel was going to fall and I caught her, and she knew that I knew she wasn't a human, or 100% human at least, she was really frightened at that moment. Well, I was too. I was scared out of my wits. But then, as I looked into her eyes, I realized that she was more afraid than I was. So I'm sure that she told her father about it, and she may have been afraid that I wouldn't let her stay as a roommate with my daughter. So her father called a meeting, a week or so after this event, and he called a meeting in the girls' apartment between me and Marisa and Raechel, and he gave me the background information on Raechel.
What was your reaction to that?
Well, she sat in her bedroom, while he was, which was just barely off the living room, because this was a very small apartment. She sat in the bedroom and listened, and at the beginning of this meeting that we had, the Colonel started out talking in a regular conversational tone, and then after a few minutes, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, we seemed to have kind of concluded the conversation, and I had this huge download of information in my mind. And I know now that he did that telepathically to me and to Marisa also.
So the Colonel, was he fully human too? Or was he specially trained maybe, like as a telepath or something?
Well, he was specially trained. He went through, and he talked about that too during this telepathic exchange. Well, not exchange, it was a one-way thing from his mind to mine. But he covered that too, how he had received special training, and how he'd been assigned to Four Corners, because he seemed to have a special ability to communicate telepathically. And that was one thing that was important that the personnel have at that base, or at least the ones in charge. So that was the only time that he did that. The rest of the time he talked just like anyone else. When he would come to see the girl, he was just like anyone else.
Right.
How would you describe their relationship? Was it something close, like a normal father-daughter relationship, or?
Yes, pretty much. Except that she called him by his first name, and I'm not sure why that was, but it was probably, well, he was supposed to raise her as a daughter, and I think that that was just a little bit more than he could handle, to have her call him dad or father or anything like that. And I think they agreed that she could call him Harry, but he would act as her father to, to care for her and see that she had everything she needed, and to raise her as a human as much as possible.
Hmm. Sounds more
So I
like
think it was.
sounds more
Yeah,
like
I
a
think
custodian slash handler position.
yes, and since I've written the book, um, I've had time to think about a lot of things, and some of those hidden memories of information kind of surfaces after a while. I believe now that he was really a handler,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but at the time that I wrote the book, and at the time that all of this stuff was going on in '72, I didn't know much about handlers.
Right.
And actually, I didn't know anything about Area 51, as I recall. I was in the middle of just a horrendous, awful marriage, and I was just trying to survive myself from day to day. And I think that, well, there may have been one reason that I was involved as much as I was, because I didn't have time to question anything.
Right.
I would now,
Yeah.
but
We get too busy with life sometimes.
well, I was literally trying to survive, and so I believe that that's, but I do think now that his official job was probably as a handler.
Right.
But it didn't make all that much difference at that time. I believe he did a fine job, um, of acting as her father, hand, or handler, whatever you would want to call it. But he did the things that needed to be done, and I think there was a real uh, good rapport between them. But I don't
So,
know whether you would call it love.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. Did you see like a genuine care on his part, or if she was even capable of showing that towards him, or even towards your daughter?
I don't think that Raechel was uh, capable of what we would call love. Uh, she really became very close as a friend to my daughter. Um, but as far as love, I don't know. But that was part of the purpose of her being integrated into society as much as possible, to see how much or to what degree her emotions would develop.
Right. Hmm.
But that
Yeah.
was difficult for her because I don't think she had the capability. I don't think any of the aliens do.
Did you ever see her maybe like get our normal responses, get upset, frustrated, any of those kind of emotions?
She got frustrated with me one day. Another time I had stopped to see my daughter, and she wasn't home, but Raechel was. And so I stood there in the kitchen. I said, well, I'll just wait for a few minutes, because, again, I couldn't stay very long. Um, so I stood there, and I'm in the kitchen, and Raechel stood just a few feet away from me, and she said, I wish you could be my mother. And I was really surprised, and I said, well, Raechel, I can't be your mother, but I could be your friend. And she said, I want you to be my mother. And I said, well, again, I told her, I can't. And I remember standing there in the kitchen, and there was an old kitchen table in the apartment, and I stood with my back to it, and I had one hand back on the table because it felt so cool and nice. It was like a porcelain or enamel top table like people used to have, the really old-fashioned ones. And it was such a hot day, and it just felt good for my hand on there. So anyway, she said, I'm going to show you where I was raised. And so I don't remember anything after that until I found myself someplace other than the apartment. And I was in a huge room, kind of a oval-shaped room, and there was a big row of windows that were maybe about waist high or something close to that height, and they seemed to go way up to the ceiling. And I was on the outside of these windows, and Raechel was on the inside, and she was kind of impatient. Come on through. And I said, well, I can't. There isn't any door. It was just all solid windows, individual ones, maybe 3 or 4 feet wide and up to the ceiling. And she said, that will be okay, or will be all right. You put your hand on the window on your side, and I will put my hand on the inside of the window, and you can come through. And I thought, this is really, really crazy. But I did it, and I felt myself going through the window, passing through it, and it was just really easy. I felt my body elongating, and just feeling kind of wavy and almost a little nauseated, but then it didn't take very long to go through it, so I got over the nauseated feeling. And then we went not very far, like across the hall or something, and there was another room that had rows along the walls, along both walls, and they were stacked 3 high, I think. And it was like aquariums, and there were fetuses in these aquariums. They were sort of just floating or moving around in a kind of a greenish liquid. And it just made me feel sick to look at them because they really did not look human. They looked deformed, and I felt kind of sick to my stomach.
What was this? This was a terrestrial building?
No, it was off planet.
Ah.
As far as I know, it was not a terrestrial building, I don't think.
Did it feel like a craft, or did it feel like it was a on ground?
It felt like a craft.
Hmm.
It felt like a craft. There was nothing that looked made on Earth. And the windows, I call them glass, but I don't think they were.
Right.
You know, it was a solid substance, but I don't know what it was. It was, if I had to tell you for sure, I would say it was probably some sort of a plastic, but then I don't know that either. But I don't think, I'm pretty sure it was not glass.
So it's something we can't buy, obviously.
No, anyway, she said, your job is to help care for these, and she pointed at them. And I said, I can't do that, and I won't do that. I need to go back and help Marisa. The truth was that it would make me sick to look at those and to have to do anything with them. To touch them, it would just be, I couldn't have done it. And she got really, really angry. I could see her face changed, and so did her tone. And she said, well, we will find another job for you, and you will be a teacher. And I don't know why I was the way that I was. I said, but I don't have any credentials, because teachers have to have credentials. But that had nothing to do with anything at that point. And she said, it does not matter. You will tell people about this. And that's how she meant I would be an educator, I guess.
Right.
And then I said, I have to go back. I need to go back. So the next thing I knew, I was back in the kitchen with my hand standing, leaning up against the table, and my hand still back of me on that cool tabletop. And she was there, and at just about that time, my daughter came, and so I talked to her. That was probably one of my strangest experiences I've ever had.
So
I know
I would have been, I would have been
Hmm?
sort of in shock after that.
Well,
Like,
I was.
holy Toledo, what just happened?
Yeah, and I still had to drive quite a few miles to go home. I don't know how I did it. But, and I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. Nothing at all. I would swear that I was on a craft with her. Because that's where she wanted to take me, was to show me where she was raised, probably from an embryo, which had been cloned, or I don't know, in vitro fertilization, or whatever
Right.
they did, and then raised in one of those aquarium things.
Wow.
And apparently she felt it was important that I see that.
Well, in light of the fact that she just asked you to be her mom, in that situation, she really doesn't have a mom.
No.
So, I can see that. I could see the emotional side of her reaching out for something that the human side of her reaching out for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I could see that afterwards. It was just that the shock of it, I didn't really know how to handle it at the time.
The one thing that brings up to mind is, for example, when a woman is pregnant, and how now it's scientifically proven that the baby recognizes the father's voice, and of course recognizes the mother's voice, and the
Mm-hmm.
importance of you talking to the baby while in pregnancy, and even the reaction of the mother if she's in an abusive relationship that reacts to the baby. So them not having any of that has to have, because we really need that. So
Oh, we
I can
do.
understand. Yeah, I can understand why she was very not really. Her emotional part was. Would you say her emotional part was kind of dry?
Yeah,
Almost.
yeah. Well, I may be partially her mother or something, have made some contribution to her, because there was one time, way before that, uh, where I was having a miscarriage, and I found myself in the doctor's office, the obstetrician's office, and they were going to do a D&C on me. Well, this lady who was the doctor, she had privileges at the hospital where I worked. I was like a clerk in the hospital, so I knew who she was. And she was not a really pleasant person. I don't know why I found myself in her office. Her coworkers didn't like her very well, either the other docs and the nurses. But anyway, I found myself in her office and laying on the table, the examining table, and there was a light overhead like they always have in their offices. And it wasn't like a white or yellow light. It was like a blue light, which was unusual, but I was in quite a lot of pain, and it didn't really matter what color the light was, I guess, at that time. But I remember a lot of pain. They were doing something inside of me with an instrument, and then there was another lady in the room, and it seems that she was not a nurse, but she wasn't dressed like a nurse. She had a suit or something on. It was just regular business wear or something. And I remember doing this, whatever, inside of me, and then the doctor said, and she had something in her hand. It was like what they call a spoon in medical talk.
Right.
And there was something in it, I guess. And so she handed this spoon to the other lady, and she said, "Here, you know what to do with this." And I thought that she just meant dispose of it, you know.
Right.
But I'm thinking now that may have been the original part of Raechel, that they somehow did some in vitro fertilization or something. I don't know. It's all kind of a blur, that part.
Right.
That makes so much sense actually now.
It makes a whole lot of sense. A whole lot of it.
Yeah, introduce her to her half-sister, or I don't know how would you put it, but let's just say half-sister and her mother, and try to form that family bond back again. Yeah,
Well,
it's a lot of
yes,
sense.
I believe that now. I don't really, I never did think it was pure happenstance that those two girls were put together as roommates. It was a part of the black government part, the humanization project. And I think that it was just engineered that way, that my daughter would be there and certainly need somebody. But to have Raechel and her father, who came from a very top secret base, and Raechel, who came from off planet, and the two of them maybe some sort of relation. I don't know if it's half sisters or what combination. But it's very strange that the two of them got together.
Right. Right.
It just seems that the whole thing was set up.
Too coincidental to be coincidence.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidence.
Nope, synchronicity, yes, but not coincidences.
Yeah, I agree.
But I don't know for sure. I do know that Raechel was part of the humanization project. That I am sure of.
So, what have you learned about this humanization project?
Should we save that for the next hour, Tom?
Oh, probably a good idea. We're getting close to the top of the hour already. Wow.
Oh, okay.
Wow, time is flying. So, I guess this is a good a point as any to wrap up this first hour. Helen, would you share where people can pick the book up and your website for us again?
Oh, sure. Yes, you can get it at Amazon, or if you'd like a signed copy, or if you'd just like to communicate with me, my email address is booklady, HL, my initials, at AOL.com. And I'd love to hear from you. You don't have to buy a book. That would be nice, but maybe you've had some experiences you'd like to talk about. I don't have answers, but I'm a good listener.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna definitely dig into some of the things that you've learned in the post process since the fact in your investigations and delving into your own memory and your regressions, which we definitely have to go into the regression aspect of this.
Oh, yes.
And touch on that and dig into some of the stuff you found out there in the second hour. So if you are listening to this on one of those other medias out there, the iTunes, the Vimos, the YouTubes, the wherever it happens to land, and want to check out hour 2, you'll have to pop over to the 100th Monkey Radio. That's the 100thmonkeyradio.com. Love you guys, and we'll see you in the next hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Namaste.
And then you can't wait to get out. Then you shout, damn, I got freedom. Unless it's being taught, black man, I know you need one. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. The plan, then that's the native. You shouldn't tell an artist not to be creative. You see, the motive is to control more than business. Midless enoughness in the soul, and I bring much more than your average MC. Please give me a break, man. Let me be me, so I can be free to do as I please. See what I see, be who I be. And yo, act like me. I got the rhyme and my timing from the center. Lyrics from the brain, even when I start to enter. The beats I'm bending, the vibes I'm sending, it's pleasure, never better. Even though shit is a mess, I never stress, in touch with insight, therefore I'm blessed with the armor. Tell your mama, but kill the drama. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. The master rhymer in the street. I walk the street with the knowledge, learning about things that you can't get in college, like science from the pavement, beats from the basement. My mouth full of lyrics, and the label makes the placement. Then my face went across the screen. This girl saw me getting raw to the beats with the gasoline. My self-esteem went through the roof. Stepped into the club, yo, I got juice, got juice on the MI. Now she's in my face, dragging me all around the place. Damn, it's a disgrace that I can't enjoy my craft, spew my math, cause I'm too busy running away from this girl with the dumb laugh. My path straight, so I lose the habit, and yo, I bounce like the rabbit. Yo, she's got the habit, cause she's chasing me. I'm out the door, kid, it's in the soul, and I'm free. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up, if you missed it, then press rewind.